Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me, as always, is my co-host James Fox. How are you, James?
I'm good, man. What's going on?
Not a whole lot. Counting down the days until opening day. We're at 4 days here.
Yep.
So, what better time to talk to somebody who is knee deep in the White Sox mire, as it will? Uh, we have a guest here from CHSN, Mr. Connor McKnight. I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on. How are you, Connor?
What's up, fellas? How we doing?
Doing all right. Things
Good.
have taken kind of a weird turn here in the last couple of days. Um, we had some high hopes and possible free agents that we signed that we were possibly looking forward to seeing, but, it's kind of turned a little bit weird here.
Yeah, things happen as you get down to camp, and I think I was just listening through. We're going to do a Major League news and notes on the television broadcast tomorrow, so I'm trying to, okay, we'll get my head around all this stuff. And we're scrolling through all the injured list placements. Like this guy's supposed to, this guy's gonna. I mean, there's half a league on the IL to start the season this year. It's wild.
Absolutely crazy. Well, I mean, you've got a new position over at CHSN. Kind of how did that unfold? How was your transition, and what exactly are you going to be doing over there?
That's the best question, Ian. That's absolutely the best question. Okay, here's what. Ready? White Sox insider and field reporter. That's that's what we're going to call it. I'm going to do a lot of things. We're going to go down to the minor leagues. We're going to talk to some people. We're going to show you some stuff from some of the top prospects as the season goes along. Be doing sidelines for all the home games alongside Brooke Fletcher. Be filling in for John and for Len and for DJ on the radio side on play-by-play whenever they need a day, and a whole bunch of other stuff along the way on the lead on CHSN and all that other good stuff. So, the transition's been great. We have Chris Withers, and other teams do not. Chris Withers, for those of you who don't know, is the director of White Sox broadcasts and had been for the last couple of years on NBC Sports Chicago. Guys, he's fantastic. I mean, he's absolutely fantastic, and to be under his wing is awesome. He leads the broadcast, does a great job.
Hi,
All
Sam.
right, all
Hi,
right. So
Hey,
as you
what's
were
up?
saying,
lost you for a second. Back now.
so I saw that you were going to be doing some fill-in dates and stuff like that for the White Sox broadcast, and that's super exciting. We're super excited for you. So congrats. It's awesome. So Doug asks if we think that the Sox might pick up Dane Dunning.
Yeah,
And me and you had talked about this. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, in what role? Like, maybe if I feel like if they think that maybe they could like convert him to relief or something, but I don't think he like necessarily has a spot in the rotation, and I think he's like $2.5 million. So, I mean, I think like on outright waivers, like they get the first crack at him, but I don't know. I have no idea.
Fair enough. We were just discussing Dane Dunning being put on the waiver wires here, and whether or not the White Sox would scoop him up. But the role seems
Yeah,
kind of blurred here, so I'm not entirely sure that that's a realistic thing here.
Yeah, Darren Jackson and I were actually talking about that prior to the broadcast this afternoon. We had the call on the radio side, and if it had all happened, I don't know, like 12 hours ago, or I don't know, maybe like 24, and Bassel hadn't been the pickup, who's a Rule 5 pick, who I'm sure you guys just talked about and detailed and did all the stuff on, then yeah, maybe, but the number is somewhat prohibitive for what the White Sox have been doing anyway, which I'm, again, sure you guys covered.
Yeah. Well, so I heard you and Chuck
you go ahead.
you and Chuck focused on like 10 storylines. So like I'm not looking for that, but what just a couple of takeaways from Will Venable's first camp.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really impressed by him, and I know that White Sox fans have heard that from a lot of different places. I get it, but the reason you've heard it from a lot of different places is because he's pretty damn impressive. I think he's running a pretty slick camp. Obviously, Drew Butera has been helping him out a lot with that. I have really enjoyed the conversations I've had with both Will and Walker McKinven, the bench coach. Had a chance to get to know some of those, both of those guys during Sox Fest, whatever it was, a month and a half, 2 months ago now. Time blurs, and I don't know when we are. I do know it's 4 days till opening day. That's about it. And Listen, I just think cutting edge is a really easy phrase to chuck out there, but the willingness to get out there is another thing altogether. And a lot of managers in this game, whether they're, in spots or, advanced metric type spots or not, are a little bit afraid to lean out that way. And I don't get the sense that Will is. And I really like that. I appreciate that about him. We'll see what happens when the first roster cuts or, the final roster cuts come along and, how he's got to deal with some complicated and kind of clunky roster situations right now, given all the injuries. But so far, the feedback I've gotten is that guys really like Will to this point.
Yeah, it seems like I don't know. I know that the thing that James and I are like most interested in is how things have changed between one set of management and the next set of management as far as like the implementation of analytics and all that stuff. I mean, how are we going to notice a difference with that? So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, it'll be a really interesting thing to watch, right? And I think it's going to be one of those things where 2 months in, we'll talk about this way too. Hey, we had Murphy up in the pen ready to go, but didn't use him, even though that's a great spot for him. Well, he might have gotten up 3 times. He might not have been ready. That that kind of thing. You just never know with bullpen usage. And for me, like that's kind of the most live action way to assess the analytical kind of bent of a major league coaching staff. And it's also the thing that we have the least information on a given day, right? For the game that Murphy's down today, because obviously you don't do that. But I do think that here in camp, I think work smarter has been a really big theme here in camp. I think really paying attention to what kind of time is spent on what has been an emphasis, and I know that that's been appreciated in a lot of different places. Will's been here, he's run a camp before. He has studied under future Hall of Famers. His apprenticeship to this job is comes with a lot of the guy's got degrees on the wall. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's like you walk into a lawyer's office and you see like Stanford or Harvard or wherever good lawyers go to school. Like Will's got those things on his wall. I mean, there's baseball pictures on his wall, but there would be degrees if he had them.
Saw a World Series trophy behind him when he did his first interview Zoom call with everybody. So obviously that's impressive.
Well, I mean, just the fact too that he took this job, Connor, and like we keep hearing this, right? Like I think me and Ian, like whatever, when Chris Getz took this job, like everybody else, like we weren't thrilled just because we wanted like a whole process, right? And we don't have to rehash that, but like one thing I've kind of said with all these moves the last 2 years, like he was an internal hire, but he's operated like an external hire. Like these are like all brand new people. So
Yeah,
and it's even into this year with the coaching staff, and fans are sick and tired of hearing about the research and development department and my international updates. Like nobody cares, right? They want to find out when we're going to win again. But I think just a lot of this stuff has been really important. We'll see, because it's ultimately going to depend on like them bringing in good players. But I kind of like Getz's process a lot more than I kind of thought I would initially.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'll offer 2 points here. One, I think underlying the fact that clearly there's a vision here that guys are buying into, prying Walker McKinven away from Milwaukee is the move that highlights that the most, right? Because if you're an aspiring major league manager, there are 30 of these jobs, and if one of them comes open and this is your year as the hot guy, then you take that gig, right? Then you take that gig. And that's not necessarily what happened with Will, but we're close to that kind of conversation, right? The one that I think really drives this home is Walker McKinven leaving the Brewers, where, I mean, listen, you read any beat writer writing about how that run prevention thing works. Boy, how does Milwaukee keep it together with no payroll and in a division where you've got the Cubs and they could spend so much? A lot of it's Walker McKinven. Not, like everything, but a lot of it has to do with the department Walker McKinven was running, and that's a big thing. And the second thing is this, and I think it's fair. They are in sifting for talent mode, maybe a bit longer and a bit more strenuously than I kind of thought they'd be at this point. Like the Mike Vassell claim, who's a Rule 5 guy. You're going to carry 2 Rule 5 guys in a bullpen that might start, might relieve, could do a little bit of everything. I get the reasons for it, right? You guys have seen all the elbows explode and that, you need innings. But I kind of thought that at this point would be a bit more set with some of the names going to break camp here in 2025. We're not. And like I said, there's a lot of reasons for it. But I think that's one where Chris is kind of seemingly being as aggressive as he can in some of those spots because he wants to find as much talent as he can, whether it's going to exist in 2026 roster or whether it's going to be, deadline move stuff and bring younger kids back.
So we're in a bit of a White Sox bubble, obviously. Like this is the team that we're paying attention to, and you're trying to build through pitching, and these guys break, and this happens. But 5 Tommy John surgeries in one camp seems like a lot. And maybe it's because, this is just, a little bit more than normal, and I'm just not paying attention. But it seems like quite a bit.
Yeah, it is, and it's the industry right now. I know, this is another thing where I get that it's hard to hear, right? Because you want these arms to come up here and flame innings, but this is where it is. I guess if it makes you feel any better, and it shouldn't, but if it makes you feel any better, you could kind of make the Drew Thorpe injury, you can backdate it, I guess. I mean, you can't, and he can't, but you kind of could, right? I mean, we all kind of saw what was happening in that situation. It's Getz said this today in his media availability. It's kind of good timing in that by the time mid 2026 comes around, I mean, yes, you're going to lose, roster time, development time, and all that kind of stuff. But Tommy John is what it is at this point, guys. Right? Like, yeah, it's a really difficult rehab for guys, but you go through it and you get back. Right? I mean, the work that goes into it is brutal, and the mental strain that goes into it. Yeah, I point this out a lot because I think we, as removed from the game, kind of just hear Tommy John and then put the dates in our mind. But the work these guys have to go through, and then that first time, like the first time you're throwing, and the scar tissue starts to go on you a little bit, and you have this fear in the back of your throat, in your heart, that icy cold, like, oh my God, I'm done. Like this is over. I'll never. And it's just the scar tissue, but you never know that until it happens to you the first time. Like these guys, like there's anxiety about that. Anyway, that's kind of a pet thing for me, and I think a really big and important thing in this game when you got so many Tommy Johns going on. But yeah, it's not great, and nobody has answers for it. And I think there's probably a reckoning coming one way or another, whether it be in a CBA or in new styles and types of contracts. They're going to have to prevent for this kind of stuff one way or the other.
I'd say one thing that the White Sox do have is a lot of TJs. So when these guys are down there rehabbing in Arizona, at least there's other guys that are around to let them know what they're experiencing to kind of help walk them through this whole scenario. Because, if you don't have somebody there telling you about the scar tissue and it popping in your arm when you're throwing, you're thinking the worst. So, I mean, I think it's at least halfway decent that you've got, guys like Cole Seamus and who else is Connor McKnight down there in Arizona. At least those
That's
guys are
right.
there to kind of help them through that stuff.
Yeah, Ian. I mean, like I think that's a great point, and I think I've said for a little while now that TJ guys need a shepherd. At some point, you have to have somebody there. Like you're on the roster. You're on the whatever 60-day. Like the things you should be handed after you're done with your search. Sources you need first and foremost, and then like the number to call of the guy that has had Tommy John so that he can talk you through what's going on and what's not going on, what's okay and what's not okay, right? I know you lost the video here, but hopefully this audio still works because this is a thing I believe in, and Tommy John guys need a shepherd through the wilderness.
Just going to start bringing up the starting rotation here. And obviously things have kind of gone cattywampus here with all the injuries. But do you think that the starting rotation is going to be better than anticipated? Sean Burke's getting the open day start. And we've also got, a newcomer in Shane Smith, whose stuff looks to be absolutely electric. What are your thoughts on the rotation?
Yeah. So first, like I listen to the podcast a lot, and you guys do a great job. And I think the fact that you have as much feedback as you do right now is incredible. And I am so sorry to people listening for the tech issues. I'm going to blame it on the hotel Wi-Fi. I feel terrible. I hate it when I listen to a favorite podcast and the audio does the whole thing. So this is all on me. Don't put this on Ian or James. And yeah, I think it could be better than we think it's going to be. There are going to be growing pains, and I think like what you hope doesn't happen is that guys like Burke and Shane Smith and maybe even Davis Martin in a first full year back, like go through hiccups at the same time, right? Or like have command abandon them for 6 inning stretches or 2 start stretches all at the same time, because that eats a bullpen. And we've already talked about the pitching depth. Like that's what you're hoping doesn't happen. But I think that's why, having guys like Bryce Wilson and Mike Vassell now kind of in that roster and able to throw multiple innings matter as much as they do. I think I would bet the White Sox probably have 2 more moves in the next 60 days, kind of picking up some extra innings one way or another, right? I mean, it's how you have to insulate yourself in this. I think, we had Getz on the breakout game. Brooke and I were doing that game on TV, and I kind of teased him a little bit, like, what is it, the off the wall opening day starter thing, like, what's up? And I think it's about top tier stuff. I think it's about matchups against the Angels. I think that matters. You're trying to win ball games. And I've talked to Sean a little bit. He is an incredibly likable dude, and he has worked his ass off, to get himself back to where he was at this point 2 years ago, right? As the 6th guy that was going to make starts for the White Sox in, what was the 23, 20, doesn't matter, can't do math. But I also, like, there's pitchability in this rotation too, whether it's Martin Perez, the old salty guy, or Jonathan Cannon throwing 19 different pitches. I think you'd love to have seen a more like strike heavy spring from Cannon, but the guy has shown adaptability and the ability to manipulate a pitch, many pitches in starts if he needs to. So I kind of like that as a, okay, here, deal with this, come get it in opening day, or not opening day, but once the season starts. I'm very high on Davis Martin, which I believe you guys are as well. I don't know if there's top, 1 or 2 kind of stuff in a rotation there, but if you look at Davis Martin and you're saying like that dude can't be a 3 on a really good team, I think you might be crazy. Like that's in there for him for sure, and that's to eat innings too. Like I think I had a long talk with Davis the other day. I think being able to be that guy that's like not being asked to go out for the 6th, but ask me to come out for the 7th. Like I'm all about that. We'll see, what the leash looks like. I'm not saying like that's how they're going to treat Davis Martin, but that mindset means a lot.
Yeah, big Davis Martin fans over here.
Yeah, so before we get into the bullpen, it seems like Brian Bannister met the media. There's some rumblings out there that like Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Grant Taylor all might start in Birmingham. Which look, we definitely were not expecting, and we'll see. We'll see. Right? Is that an indication to you though that they are going to be a little bit more aggressive, like for 26? Like I think we know what this year is. Like we know the expectations. We know. Those guys going to Birmingham. I think I don't hate it. I just think it's like more aggressive than I thought they'd be.
Yeah, we talked with Paulianic. I hate to bring up the breakout game again, but we broke a little bit of news with Paulianic, the farm director. We mentioned that possibility to him, and he nodded. Absolutely, that's a possibility. Schultz and Smith and Taylor, and I think the next thing that we talked about on that broadcast, if it wasn't the next thing, maybe the one after. They're not afraid to call guys up from AA to the bigs. You can't be, especially in this environment and given the way elbows explode and the fact that Charlotte's a bandbox, right? I think you got to be able to be aggressive, and the Sox have shown that. And that's another thing I like about this front office, right? I don't know if the last one was kind of thinking about things that same way, and I like this approach. As for 26, yeah, I think so. The thing about Schultz and Smith, though, is that this will be their first year ever thrown every 5 days, right? And you guys know there is no greater step in a player's development than other than like going to the big leagues. Obviously, I'm taking that one off the board, but like making that move from Friday night starter in the SEC or however we want to talk about Noah Schultz and pitching every Saturday and 4 innings and stuff. This is the big move. This is the next biggest thing that you could possibly put on the developmental plate. So I know it's not fun or sexy, and it's certainly not going to be a pull quote or anything, but like I think we got to wait and see what the first couple months look like for both of these guys, because this is such a big ask going every 5 days.
Yeah, so then just like shifting over to the bullpen a little bit. I mean, look, a lot of these guys are pretty anonymous, right? I know you've talked quite a bit about Penn Murphy other places, but just potential surprises in the bullpen as far as guys you've seen or guys that could exceed expectations.
Yeah, I was just going through my little notebook for the broadcast tomorrow. I don't know if you can see it or anything, but you're kind of going through the bullpen and whatnot. I think, especially with the Vassell pickup, that kind of locks them into some things. I think Jordan Leisure has pitched really well. He's got a new pitch that's fun. You don't bring Bryce Wilson into the organization to not have Bryce Wilson on March 27th, so you've got Bryce Wilson in there too. Justin Anderson's on a major league deal. I still think Cam Boozer and Fraser Ellard are probably your top two lefties. Brandon Eisert pitched today. Some stuff looked good, and some command was a little off, and what have you. But there's another dude that might fit in if you want to have three. I don't know how much you need to do that, but what the injuries have done are limit the optionality in that bullpen. And I know that wasn't plan A. It was to have a little bit more or as much optionality in that bullpen as you could. And unfortunately, that got taken away from them a little bit with injuries to, Prelander Baroa and, Carella, and down the line you go, right? So they're going to have to make a little bit of that up on the fly. And if some of that is pressing some veteran arms, maybe even like a Mike Clevenger, into some leverage duty, then you spin that off for talent down the line, right? You're talking about June and July trades at that point. And while it's not ideal, right, you wanted to see young flamethrowers throw flame. I think that's kind of where they're set. I think that's probably what we're going to end up seeing.
You think with Thorpe going down and Shane Smith, effectively taking that, probably the next guy up is probably Bryce Wilson. Is that what you're thinking? Is that what's being talked about?
I think Smith could do it. I think Shane Smith could be that five. Let me make sure we got the five right. Burke, Perez, Martin, Cannon, and Smith, right? I feel like that's probably your rotation, and you're going to need six. You're going to skip a start for somebody at some point. I think Wilson's that guy. I think that's essentially how it works. And, listen, Nick Nastrini is going to get starts in AAA. The Mason Adams injury is an issue, and I'm sure you guys kind of picked that up while my audio was kind of cracking in and out. We'll wait and see on that. Hopefully he's able to avoid Tommy John. I don't know. But yeah, I would kind of guess that's how it's a little less because of these injuries and because of what that forced them to do in that pen, it's a little bit less fun to start the year on the pitching side, despite the fact that it could be a whole hell of a lot of fun to watch Smith and Schultz and Taylor at Double-A. That's where the action is to me.
We had a question in chat about the Tyler Gilbert pickup. I know that they were, that they kind of prioritize picking him up. I mean, are we thinking that he's a bullpen spot or, spot starter? I mean, at any point?
Yeah, I think multiple innings is kind of still on that list for him. Remind me on Gilbert. I think there's an option there.
Well, I think
I think
right? Multiple. They gave up like a semi-real prospect though, so I guess I just kind of assumed that guy was on the team. So yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and I could be missing on Gilbert. I could. I think maybe I've fallen for Penn Murphy, in a way that's unsafe and unhealthy, and I'm ready to have my heart broken again. But we'll see. Yeah, I think yeah, sure. Throwing Gilbert out there, absolutely fine. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure where they're going to end up on that yet. But I think there's a real desire to keep guys stretched out because of the accordion thing that could happen that we talked about earlier when we were talking about the rotation. And I would imagine that Gilbert's one of those guys keeping multiple innings on his list.
Is the Luis Robert situation weird for anyone? I know you want him to go out and take care of business, and I think Chris Getz will make a trade whenever he hears the names that he wants, but obviously that hasn't happened, and I think everybody just kind of knows where this is headed, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be on the team.
I think being able to talk about it out loud, because Chris Getz and Robert have talked about it out loud, is the best way to deal with it. We've all been at the family dinners where nobody wants to hear anybody talk about politics, and you say it out loud before you sit down to turkey, and then things go just a little bit better. It's still weird, but things go a little bit better. And I credit him for that. Teams in transition like this, and at the start of a rebuild, or whatever, step one or whatever, you have to deal with this. You must. This is an absolute must. So you have to deal with it correctly, because it will occur again. And so far, the White Sox have had to navigate that with some big time contracts and big time players. Things got wonky with Garrett Crochet and the talk about a long-term extension prior to the deadline last year. I think that wonkiness has kind of largely been avoided with Robert to this point. I think it. I don't know if helps is the right word, but in regards to the weirdness, it helps that Robert needs to bounce back and be healthy, right? Like he needs to prove to literally everyone that he can stay healthy and be the guy that he was in 2023. And I think he can. And I know he believes he can. I'll tell you that much. And I think being able to just kind of have the conversation out loud that's the big part, right? Just being able to be honest about it and be upfront about it and address it if you can. And to my knowledge, they have as much as one can, given that there's a CBA and talking about players the way you have to.
Yeah, I mean, expecting. Do you expect a resolution here in the near future? Or are we thinking trade deadline? I mean, it's complicated. I know. Just
It is, and yes, I do. I was talking about this when I was hosting White Sox weeklies, even during the off season before I switched spots. Yeah, I do. I get the sense that, like James said, I think we're aligned on this. If the names are right, the move's going to get made.
I don't think this front
From back home.
office. No, yeah. Like I don't think this front office is one that's like, hey, we're gonna wait till the deadline and get 10 teams involved. Like if they hear the names, like they're gonna do it in May. It'll be Luis Arias, and it'll just kind of happen, and it's very clearly has not happened. I know Bruce Levine on 670 kind of talked about how they're looking for 3 like pretty good prospects still for him.
Yeah.
And he's made the point that like, some places they've been offered 2 or whatever, and they just haven't like been able to match. But look, I think if he's healthy, I think it's one of those things where we might hear about May trades that we don't usually hear about.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm back, by the way. Hi, I'm back. That was actually my wife FaceTiming, and that's on me. I didn't you can't put the thing on airplane mode if your wife's going to FaceTime you or if you're chatting with Ian and James. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's right. And like the key here is not it's not trading, in my mind. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. It's not trading Luis Robert Jr. at his peak value. It is not trading him at his current value, right? Like you can't guarantee but you cannot trade him at this level that he is currently at. Yeah, spring has gone great and the whole deal and whatever, and he's healthy, but there's more to be had here. And I do get the sense that the Luis Arias trade gets thrown out a lot, not in terms of like player comp or health or any roster or whatever, but like that was a team that was ready to make a move.
Yeah, that was early.
Yeah, that was really early, and the Marlins knew what was up. Like they're good on that. They're good.
So we've heard a lot about Miguel Vargas. Obviously, what have you have you seen a difference? Obviously, from last year to this camp.
I really have. He hit well today. He had the home run that bounced off the glove. It went over the wall in the game today against the Diamondbacks. And I looked at DJ. I think Vargas got another hit later on. And I just looked at him. I said, DJ, he looks like he's on everything. Like he just looks like he's on everything. The swing is confident. And you guys, he pulled the home run and went oppo, I think, for the single, if I recall correctly. And just being able to watch that. Am I wrong? Did he pull both?
Yeah, he pulled it in on the shortstop.
He pulled both.
Side, but
you're right.
He hit it real hard.
He pulled over the shortstop. I'm thinking of the Narvaez hit that went down the other way. I don't have my scorebook in front of me. Otherwise, otherwise we would lose our audio again if I put more things on the table, I guess. But either way, he sat on it all looks different to me. He's swinging with authority, and I mentioned it last year on lots of post-game shows, and I mentioned it today on the broadcast. At no point was Miguel Vargas swinging at bad pitches last year, but he was making zero impact on the baseball. If you just add a little bit of impact, you are much better than he was last year, and obviously the hopes are much higher for Vargas than just that. But yeah, he does look a lot different to me, like a lot.
Yeah, I think it's like, it's a lot of like really good PCL stats in the minors, right? But it's different than like what the worry typically is, right? Because he's put up 400 on base percentages, which is the thing. It's not Matt Davidson, hitting 30 homers in the PCL and with the Ks and no walks type of thing, right? This is like I get that it's the PCL, but he was a real prospect for a reason.
I love Matt, and I'm going to text him and tell him you said that. Okay, I'm going to text, and then he's going to be like, "Yeah, I don't care," because that's Matt. Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's important to note. It's important to note that power and patience correlate, right? You don't just draw walks because you got a great eye, and you don't just hit homers because you can draw. They both have to work together at the big league level, and I think more fans could probably stand to gain a better appreciation of that, right? You got a little bit of power, a lot of power, pitchers stay away from you, it leads to more walks. This kind of discerning eye leads more pitches toward the center of the strike zone or your happy spot or whatever, and you can hit those pitches for a little bit more power, right? We're not talking about total skill sets or the thing that makes a guy great, but it's absolutely additive in a very large way, almost even to my mind exponential, right? If you punish, you are going to get rewarded by your patience too. And I think you're right to point out PCL. I think that's absolutely fair. We do it for Charlotte all the time. Why not do it for a similar offensive environment? But the walks didn't materialize out of nowhere, and neither did some of his power numbers. I think there's a lot of fair expectations on Vargas to be like a maybe not first division third baseman in 2025, but certainly a guy that could start for a lot of teams. I think that's fair to ask, and I think the front office has set us up for that too.
I think if you go back to last spring training and you look at Miguel Vargas with the Dodgers last spring, when they wouldn't let him swing the bat, that was peak Miguel Vargas, So pretty awesome. I just want to kick in here real quick. Thank you, Tacos, for the super chat. We appreciate you. Thank you. All right, so moving along here, when do you think we'll be able to notice a reshape of the hitting side under Chris Fuller?
When guys are healthy.
Ryan Fuller.
Ryan Fuller. That's all right. I called him Christian Hackenberg today on the radio broadcast because I don't know. Apparently,
I've been calling him Kyle Fuller for months because of the Bears corner. Yeah, for months.
Because of the Bears corner.
I do it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody gets one, right? I think, honest to God, I think the fair answer is the most unfun answer, and it's when guys get healthy. I think they expected a lot out of Josh Rojas, or at least, certainly a guy that can start in a lot of different places, and you're not going to have him for several weeks, it looks like. We'll see what happens with Brandon Drury, right? Lord knows. It's weird roster machinations at this point and opting out of it, whatever. All of it matters, and it's entirely possible that by the time we put this out there that Drury and the White Sox have something else or somebody else has scooped him up. But Drury came to the White Sox for a reason. Fuller's part of it. Marcus Thames is part of it. So if that bounce back happens, credit first Drury for being healthy and working, but also the White Sox for giving him a spot to do it, regardless of where it happens. I think that's a place you can measure some of that impact. I think the other thing too is let's look at AAA a little bit. Fuller's not here to just impact the major league roster. Kyle Teal needs to conquer AAA at this point. He did not play well, small sample. He did not play all that great at AAA Worcester. He smashed AA. There's a next level for him. I think the Colson Montgomery at all absolutely matters. Let's not pretend Ryan Fuller doesn't have notes for Colson Montgomery when he hits AAA Charlotte. I think all of that are probably better ways to judge his impact than is Jacob Maya hitting 300, right? Or is, that matters a little bit more to me in the long term.
I do think it's an important point though that he's the director of hitting, he's not the major league hitting coach. I think
that is true.
I think there was some good stuff with Marcus Thames last year that I saw just approach wise, but the team was so bad that it just didn't really matter, that that I thought Marcus Thames was doing an okay job. Even just so I don't know, that whole thing was, I'm just glad that we asked Connor, earlier about some of the changes under Chris Getz. I'm just glad that this hire was made. I didn't know a ton about Ryan Fuller, but I said they need a director of hitting. I said they need a new international scouting director, and they did both things. So while I was, it's from the Orioles, great, sounds good. I would have been fine with anyone. I just wanted those two roles, and they did both things.
I knew more about Steve Fuller than I knew about Ryan Fuller. That is for certain. Old school Bears throwback here.
Yeah, that's a while.
Yeah. You back, Connor? I think I hear you.
I'm back. I
Yeah,
got
you're good.
you guys. This is the
Awesome.
worst podcast guest
Yeah,
of all time.
we'll be okay here. So we're gonna get into the fun stuff now. I think that's fine, right, Ian? So you did the spring breakout game. You and Brooke sounded awesome. Just how fun was it? Who stood out? Obviously, you saw the top guys. So
Yeah, man, it was a blast. Smith and Schultz just mowed. I mean, they were great. They were as advertised, and I think it was interesting to see Hagen in that particular game too, because if memory serves, the fastball command wasn't super for him. And then in his next start, it was really all over the place. That was yesterday as we're recording this, and it's for me, that's good for Sox fans to see as well, right? First round, 5th overall, out of the SEC, Arkansas pitcher, the whole thing. It's like, okay, well, let's throw him in the big leagues. There's some things to work on. Here they are. Here's how it can grow. And then he flamed a couple of guys on sliders, I think, and it's like, oh, that's where it comes from. No points for subtlety here. Smith and Schultz were really, really good. I've seen Chase Mydroth played third in that game, but I've seen him play short here over the last couple of days, and he's shown much more range and a way better first step going to his left and right than I had heard about. So that's encouraging because I think you'll probably see Chase Mydroth playing some shortstop, I would think in April for sure, if not March. So that's something there. Let's see, who else do we see in that? Well, Brooke's awesome to work with. Like, it was really cool to get to have a show with her and with Chuck. Brooke and I think met like 5 days before that, maybe less. Obviously, I've known Chuck for a long time, and when I filled in on play-by-play on TV, he's been on the sideline and stuff too. And just the I go back and watch it, but he had an in-game interview with George Wolko after he left the game. And George was the star of the broadcast. He was so much fun to talk with about other players playing well. And I think White Sox fans are going to have a lot of fun with CHSN, kind of, bringing you the inside look at Wolko over the course of the year, regardless of where he ends up. He's just funny. He's just a fun guy to be around. He wants it. He wants it. And that's cool to see with a guy who's as big and talented and with all the kind of standout kind of potential that he's got at the plate for sure.
Yeah, I saw footage of him today. Him and Aldrin Batista both accepting some sort of awards. I think Aldrin Batista was like performance athlete of the year or something along those lines. I didn't see what George just said, but yeah, he's super intelligent and nice as can be, and obviously very talented and very large.
Yeah, he's enormous. You are never confused which guy is George Wolko. You're never asking yourself that. You always know who he is.
So is there anybody else that you've got notes on from the spring breakout that you wanted to mention at all?
Yeah. Thanks, actually, because I had kind of spaced on one, and Brooke clued me into this because I had flown in, night before for my first trip to spring training, and for those who don't, it's hard to cover spring training, from home. It's very difficult because you don't get to have the conversations that you need to have. You fly in, you do a game, and you got to get caught up real quickly, and having awesome coworkers like Brooke and like Chuck, it's great to just okay, you download a little bit. And the name that came up first, I laughed at both of them when they said it. The name that came up first was William Bergolla, and I was just like the Tanner Banks trade, like William Bergolla. The Phillies don't let him play shortstop. I don't understand why. Really, and I'd heard good things about the overall package and the athleticism and approach of the plate and whatnot. But he's gotten a lot of talk in camp, whether it's coaches or other people that have seen him. And I've seen him make some good plays. I've not seen the best William Bergolla games, to be quite honest with you, like when I've been, down here watching or calling a game or whatever. But that's the other guy that's really kind of stood out. And, it makes me think a little bit of the conversation we were having about Brooks Baldwin at this point last year. Interesting prospect, some skills that play, and then it's, and you can kind of play shortstop, like maybe well. Now you're very interesting to me. Now you're going to be on top 30s. Now you're going to, now we're really going to give you that look. So I would put him as that other dude.
Yeah, we have him in our top 30, and we got to watch him a little bit last year at Winston after the trade, and he's great range, great arm, and on offense, like super annoying to the other team.
Where did you guys have him in your top 30? Remind me.
Like
Like, is he in that
20-ish.
like? Where was it?
Like 20-ish, I think. He's like right
Okay,
with the
all right.
right with the other two guys they got from the Dodgers. It's just so hard. I think he should
It's
probably be up ahead of those guys. Like, and we did it before spring training, and he's getting a bunch of love, and he looks hitterish, and he's got the whole like his dad played in the big leagues, right? You can kind of tell
yes, yeah,
after like watching him now. So, but
yeah.
that's just the stuff that you like. I went back to like old reports, and he got 1.2 million, so it was a big signing, but he just had never really hit it all in Philly.
Yeah. I think if I remember right too, I'm trying to remember back to my game notes. I think he stole like 27 bags in 33 attempts over his full whatever his whatever levels he played last year, which is like that's not nothing, and it that's not nothing.
Yeah, I think he was billed though as just this like guy that doesn't impact the ball and it's just going to be like this singles hitter that can steal bases, and how valuable is that, right? But he's
Right.
shown more than that in a brief time in Arizona. So we'll
Agreed.
see.
And coaches, I mean, I know you've heard this too, but coaches love his baseball IQ. Like he knows what bag to go to. He's making all the plays before the balls even hit, that kind of stuff, and that matters, especially when you're gonna get your assignments and when your minor league coaches find out about you and stuff. You're gonna get the download from whatever guy was running your camp. It's like, hey, I know you didn't have this guy a ton, but like, dude knows where to be. Dude knows how to play. Get him his time, that kind of thing.
True shortstop that's been doing it for a while and has been taught well on what he needs to be doing and is well versed in actually taking care of it. It's nice to see.
So
Yeah.
looking back on the Garrett Crochet trade, I mean, I think everybody obviously you're trading away the guy who might win the American League Cy Young, but I think they did about as well as they could. The other guy in that trade, Braden Montgomery, nobody saw him last year. How do you think they want to run him out in center until he proves that he can't do it? Because it just
I
seems like he's played a bunch of center field so far.
He has. I think it'll be because he played center in the breakout game too. I think it'll be less than run him out in center until he can't. I think they'll be careful is probably the wrong word, but I think he'll be mixed into center and a corner, right? I don't think from what who knows, it could change. Like maybe they in camp and go, you know what, this has been great. Center works for you, and we are going to do this. But the sense of it I get is a little bit of both, because you want him to kind of get familiar with both of those positions. I think if you just look at the scouting reports, that arm, two-way dude, you put him in right with the 30 pop potential he's got, like set it and forget it, right? That's your Ronco dude for those of you 90s kids. And then you just kind of roll with it. I think you do want to see if he can play some center, though. Like if that's there and he's got that home run power, and you're really looking at something special. I've been really impressed by him. I thought there were, and I'm not taking shots. I'm just saying, and it was on both sides, and it was really all weekend. But there were a lot of top prospects in all of the breakouts games, all of the everywheres that really wanted to hit home runs. And they knew the cameras were on and everybody was there, and that happens with everyone. Like, listen, we're talking about 19 and 20-year-olds who are desperate to make the picks. And we saw a little bit of that. I'm not judging him from that, or anybody who was taking mighty hacks. But that's just a fact, and I will be very, very interested to see just how quickly he can move, because I think regardless of level, like where he needs to be or stay at, is determined by the front office. I think his prospect ceiling is very, like, there's helium attached to Montgomery. There really is.
Yeah,
Have
after
you?
watching oh sorry.
No, you're good. Go.
After watching years of watching these prospects coming up through the ranks, seeing them play in that spring breakout, the first thing I said to James was, these guys are all taking daddy hacks. Like every single one of them was hoping for that, that MLB tweet that says, "Oh, look at
Yeah,
this monster home run that I think who was it? I think it's either Roman Anthony or somebody one of the Red Sox kids hit a monster home run in their spring breakout game." And I know that it seemed like all of the swings that were happening on that particular day there was a lot of big swings, and that I think
And
that kind of aided in the Rockies pitching looking better than I thought it should have.
yeah, I thought Hughes was good. It's certainly much better than the scouting report I'd gotten on him with the the slider he had. But yeah, and again, how could you blame them? It's like you just can't. You can't.
It was like the
Yeah.
Futures game. Do you remember the Futures game where Basabe went like left on left against somebody and murdered a ball, and
Hunter
everybody,
Green?
and it was it Hunter Green? I thought he hit it off a lefty, but
the
yeah.
guy on the Reds.
And
That's
then
who.
and then Basabe
yeah.
just kind of washed out or whatever. But yeah, it happens, like, for sure.
Yeah.
Have you Connor, have you experienced Riku Nishida or not really?
No, I have not. I have not had the Riku Nishida experience. I'm desperate for it. I'm hoping that tomorrow, final game of Cactus League, I get to see him. Obviously, I know the scouting report. I've watched the tape and yada yada yada, all the stuff. But no, I have not been. I've not been privileged to it yet. However, Darren Jackson, just nuts for it. I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely over. I mean, you guys have listened to DJ long enough. He has been literally begging for a player like this to get to the big leagues, just to mess with stuff, just to let him know that it can be played different, all that kind of thing. And from that standpoint, like, I do miss the fact that, we are in a very homogenous era of baseball. A lot of stuff looks the same now from the hitting side. Pitching side, obviously, it's a different conversation. Just look at the White Sox bullpen. Nobody knows what angle anything's coming from. But hitting-wise, he's kind of all the same, and Riku is anything but that. I have no idea if he can play in the big leagues. I really hope that he can. I have no idea if he can man second base or not, but I really hope that he can. I pray. I pray for Riku Nishida to show his wares in the bigs more nights than I care to admit.
I think even like we talked about Bergola, I think him and Nishida might benefit a little bit just from being in Birmingham, because you're going to have tons of people into Birmingham if those three pitchers are there, and Paulette's the closer. So Baseball America will be there every night, and you'll have scouts in every night. And it's like, hey, this Riku Nishida is kind of fun. So he could, even if he's not like a top 30 prospect, he's just really fun and interesting.
Yeah, and who knows, like, any rebuild to be successful, you have to have the guys who are never on a 30, that came out of nowhere, that provided this, that, or the other. And I'm not even talking about dudes that like lasted for a long time, but just guys that got the most out of their talent in their, like age 28 season or whatever, and helped you in a playoff series or got you, you know what I mean? Like, that sort of stuff must exist for this to work. It's just to be close to home, it's the Albert Almora of the 2016 Cubs, right? Guy couldn't hit at all. Like, not even a little bit. But he made some really important plays leading up to and into that World Series, and then just kind of went nowhere. You're going to have a guy like that, and who knows, maybe it's Riku.
Yeah. So just to exhaust your prospects that you're looking at, is there anybody else that you are looking forward to following this year? And the more important question is there a plan in place for exactly how you guys are going to cover the minor leagues?
That we are working, we're efforting a plan. We're getting it together. I have a 2-year-old daughter, okay? So the CHSN's plan on covering White Sox prospects, and this is fun, is as dependent on my daughter's sleep schedule as any other input or factor. I'm kidding a little bit, but not a whole lot. Yeah, we do. It's a lot dependent on, some other things. Brooke and I will travel in the major league schedule as well, so we'll have to work some things out there as well. I'll be on the first road trip, Detroit and Cleveland. So, Mom, I made it, and taking care of things on that end. I think we want to let guys get a little bit of a run and get settled and into things. But as you've seen on CHSN, there's 3 guys they've targeted, and that's Colson and Noah and George Wolko at the 3 different levels. And I think being able to take those trips, things are so close, we'll be doing a lot of miles, but the drive is easy enough to make. We'll have a chance to, kind of see things from a lot of different, or from the levels, right? I'll tease this. and hopefully we can talk about it later or whatever. I think there will be, how should I put this? I think there may be a chance to hear more from a lot of prospects who matter quite a bit to the future in perhaps an audio format with a host who has perhaps been on the radio in prior iterations of his life, who also has a lot of people. Yeah, I will be we'll be doing stuff like that too, and we're really looking forward to doing it and bringing it to folks and kind of shining the light rather. If I'm gonna pimp a podcast, this is the way to do it.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
This is I think we're gonna take a lot of angles to it, and I think we're pretty jacked about it. There was one more question though, and I've forgotten what it was prior to the whole minor league thing. So refresh. What were we? The other thing. What was the other thing? Other prospects?
Yeah.
Let me pull up the list only because I hate it when I forget a guy after you've talked and done the thing.
Yeah. I'm
scrolling through it. Not the FutureSox top 30, and I apologize.
Yeah, the names are similar.
You know what? They were really similar this year, weren't they? I think there were like 3 guys that you guys were different on.
Yeah, it was
Nick McLean is Nick.
So Nick McLean's really, I wrote an article about him. He's interesting. Yeah.
Nick, I've not read it yet. It's on my list. Then Nick McLean's really interesting, and I was talking to some people. They like gamer, baseball family, the whole thing, and like sometimes that's this, when you talk to people, and other times you can tell that it's not that, and it was not that, man. It was absolutely not that.
The general manager really likes Nick McLean. I know that much.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've really liked. I've gotten to know Caleb Bonham just a little bit. And while I can't say that I've seen a lot of Caleb Bonham, obviously, he did play in the breakout game. I don't think he got a single ball hit to him, and if it was just like routine. I think he got one at bat, and I was impressed by him. I was impressed by how he talked about what his job is this year, and obviously the potential power and shortstop combination is really intriguing for a high school player coming in. Obviously, a longer term development thing. And Ian, going back to one of the questions earlier, how do we see development and stuff? When you watch Bonham swing, it's a little unathletic, I guess. It's a little bit kind of blocky, I suppose. How does Ryan Fuller work with that? How do the minor league coaches work with that? How does he get to his power with that swing? I think that's a really interesting thing we'll get to watch and kind of evaluate from there too.
So is this roster take shape here over the next few days? Do you think we should be ready for anything right now, just across the league?
Yes.
I mean, waiver claims, trades, these 2 guys are here now that we weren't expecting. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Yes. I think, and we'll talk about it on the broadcast tomorrow on TV. And I think we will probably close that little segment saying, and also all of this could be wrong because anything could happen. And quite frankly, it should, right? Like this is where they're at. And this is the method of talent acquisition that is available to teams right now. It's guys who don't make a roster, guys who got banged up and teams got afraid of putting all this stuff. Like that matters. So bring them in if you can. 100%.
Yeah, and then just, I don't need a win-loss record because I don't really think it matters. What are a few things that makes this like a season that's successful when we look back on it and say, oh, that was pretty good because these couple things happened?
Thank God, because I have no idea how many games.
No, I don't care. I don't care about that anyway.
Yeah, and you should. You really should. I mean, you should, but you should. You should. I think Sean Burke's development is a big thing, especially with the injuries, the longer-term injuries that we're looking at throughout the course of the rotations, at AAA and AA. I think that's really big. And getting Colson Montgomery to the big leagues and finding whether or not he can play shortstop is a big next step for this organization. And I want to be really clear. I don't think that answer has to be yes. If it's not, that's okay. Got to figure out how to hit. I think that's what does have to happen, right? And I think he knows that. I know he's convinced he can be a shortstop, which is exactly what you want to hear. But I think finding those answers to those 2 things are really important. And hopefully, if both of those answers are yes, you've got some things to develop and things to build on, I suppose. I think getting Teal and Caro to the big leagues at some point will be huge. I think that's really going to change how they. I think that's going to change everything about this franchise to some degree. I think those will be things that I judge them on, and I kind of base success or not on this season. I think how we talked about it earlier, but how Schultz and Smith handle going every 5 days, how they're able to bounce back from whatever failures happen in those stretches, that's going to be really important. And just kind of thinking about the rest of the roster, I suppose that the last thing is making sure that you nail the Robert trade in the same way that you nailed the Crochet trade, or at least that it seems the Crochet trade was done. I think that's big. Yeah, I think that can really change the franchise too. Because what is it? Pipeline has the White Sox at 6 overall, something like that. I know Keith Law has written what he wrote about it. He's a little bit lower, and that's fine because Keith always is. And I think Keith has the Diamondback system at like 4, by the way, which is just doesn't matter. I think that Robert trade can potentially put this, and the development of a guy like Braden Montgomery, I think that maybe makes this farm system the top 3, and the difference there is, to me, the delta there, the change there from 6 to 3 in terms of potential future value is really big.
All right, James, are you you got anything else? All right, well, thank you so much for your time tonight, Connor. We appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to promo here other than supposed things that you're not talking about yet?
Things that could be coming, and we'll talk about soon and whatnot. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the broadcast on CHSN this year. I think it's going to be really, really good. I'm very excited to be a part of it. I'm really excited that Brooke and I get to bring a lot of different aspects to the broadcast this year. Really looking forward to getting going. I just, the smile is ear to ear at this point. I know what's in store for Sox fans from that perspective, and I can't wait for y'all to see it. I can't wait. I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be a great broadcast. I know it's going to be a great broadcast, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So that's my big tease, right? Tune in on CHSN. We'll figure out how it all gets put together tomorrow in the final Cactus League game, and then opening day on March 27th. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, we're happy that you're part of it. So congrats on that, and looking forward to the rest of this year.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it. Love the podcast. You do fantastic work. And everybody who's listening should keep listening. And those who aren't should get their act together and put the podcast on.
All right. Well,
thanks, Connor.
Appreciate it.
See you, boys.
See you. All right. Let me walk us out here, James. You have been watching / listening to the Future Sox podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that you can find us every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube and the Purple app. You can also find this podcast along with all of our written content at FutureSox.net. If you are looking for White Sox prospect highlights, you can find them on our X at FutureSox and now also here on our YouTube channel. If you love the content and want to support us here at FutureSox, there is a link to our Patreon in our channel description and at FutureSox.net. You can also toss up a super chat on our YouTube stream. Also, don't forget to like this stream and subscribe with notifications so you know when we're going live while helping us in the World Wide Web algorithms. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at JamesFox917. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for listening and commenting in the chat. You guys drive this community, guys. We appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out. You guys are the best. Have a great night.